So our next presenter, Alex Grisham from Houston, Texas, and also wants to teach secondary education, I guess social science, history. Alex, something I just thought I'd mention, because I have very little to talk about here, which is normally the case with these introductions. Alex could have graduated last year, or was thinking about graduating last year, but because he wanted to take senior research very seriously, and he's not even a history major, he's a social science major, right? Are you adding a history major as a double major?
No, it's just my focus.
So he's a social science major who decided to wait and just come back for one semester to do his senior research with his cohort in history, which I think was a very scholarly thing to do. So that is very impressive, Alex. I just want to mention that to everyone. So Alex's paper is titled "The Decision to Wage the Peloponnesian War," at least according to our schedule, and then the subtitle "Self-Immolation in the Golden Age of Athens." So I like that; it's very catchy, and the floor is yours.
All right. Like I said, I did my senior research project largely over the following Athens. So here we go. All right, so I wanted to look at, was Athens the main reason for the outbreak of the war, which ultimately caused its own fall? You know, I wanted to, originally my project wanted to focus on the whole extent of that time period from the end of the Persian Empire to the end of the Peloponnesian Wars, but that was kind of too large of a sample for me to look at. And Athens had already done enough of blunders before the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War to pretty much decide their own fate anyways. So I decided to just stick in that period. It was an age of empires. You know, you had the Persian Empire coming in from the east. You had the up-and-coming Roman Empire to the west. You know, the Macedonian Empire was coming up later after the Greeks fell, of course, to the north. You know, and Greece was just in the middle of all of that, and so I was just wondering why it didn't, you know, persevere. You know, it had all it overcame significant adversity. It had all the tools to sustain itself for a long run. You know, why did it fall? So that's what I wanted to look at. Okay, so my methodology, I use these primary sources. Thucydides, he's very important looking at the Peloponnesian Wars themselves. A lot of secondary sources also refer to Thucydides quite often. He believes the outbreak of the war was attributed to Sparta out of fear of Athens' growing power. You know, so Sparta needed to put an end to that. Also looked at Aristophanes' comedies, which are actually pretty entertaining. He offers kind of like a people's kind of point of view over the feelings of the Peloponnesian War and why certain things happened. Herodotus, father of history pretty much, he offered a great insight during the Persian Wars. And I looked at, and I also wanted to look at a speech of Pericles he made towards the Athenians right before the outbreak of the war during the Megarian decree. All right, so my chronology, what I looked at was the end of the Persian invasion in 479, the period of Pentacontatia, referred to by Thucydides, was the 50 years between the end of the Persian invasion, the second Persian invasion, to the outbreak of the First Peloponnesian War. Okay, so in the paper itself, I talked about the Delian League being one of the main points as to creating this empire and how Athens took advantage of this to create its empire. The Hell revolts as important, namely the Messenian revolt in 465 after a great earthquake was important. The construction of the Long Walls was another point I looked at, probably the most important stepping stone towards the outbreak of the war, and of course the Megarian decree. And then the end of it is the start of the Peloponnesian War. Okay, so here I have a map. Okay, so the end of the end of the Persian invasion ended here in my calendar, epic land battle in 479, and then looking at the Battle of Salamis in 480 was an epic naval battle won, which pretty much ended the Persian invasion. All right, so I bring this up because I want you to get a feel for Sparta way down here, okay, and Athens is kind of in the thick of it all, and then the Ionian revolts in Asia Minor, which I'll get to soon. Okay, so my first point was the Delian League. So the Persian War had just ended. Sparta was, they saw that the end of the war was achieved, that the goal was achieved, Persia was expelled. Okay, so what to do now? Sparta wanted to look inwardly towards maintaining its alliances that it had established long ago, and get back to its homeland, being drawn so far out, fighting Persia was draining of resources, and it wanted to find a way to get back home. Well, Athens wanted to carry on the war, namely getting rid of all the Persian influence in the Aegean. So Sparta transferred authority to Athens to carry on the war pretty much. And Sparta could be on the side, kind of do its own thing. So after that, Athens created its Delian League while Sparta went to its own Peloponnesian League in the south. And Athens, as the head, required people to their members to either donate ships, or men for the ships, or tribute. Well, as time went on, the Athenian Empire, Delian League, evolved into, more of a tyrannical system. And, Athens had no need for more ships because they already had an unchallenged navy. So they were just sucking a tribute from everybody. Okay, so the next point that I wanted to look at was the Helot revolts, which Sparta relied on a Helot system to kind of take care of its fields, run the civilian kind of things while Sparta was away, because the Helot civilization, they outnumbered Sparta, 7-to-1 people-wise. So it was a large, enslavement to overlook. Well, in 465, there was a large earthquake, and this is when the Messenians decided to revolt against Sparta, and it came to a head at Mount Italy. Well, Sparta, not doing this too often, resorted to calling to Athens for help. Well, after some haggling and diplomatic stuff, Athens relented to send some help. However, once they got there, Sparta turned them away. They were afraid that Athens would find the Helots' cause just and maybe turn sides in battle, things like that. They didn't want that to happen, so they turned them away. The sources say, that it wasn't, they weren't negative about it or mean or anything like that. They're just the system wasn't needed anymore. Well, Athens, of course, took offense to that, and as a result, Athens broke off the alliance that it had with Sparta during the Persian Wars, and allied itself with a longtime enemy of Sparta, the Argives. Okay, so my next point that I want to bring up in my paper, and probably the most important one, was the construction of the Long Walls. Obviously, with Sparta being occupied with the Helot revolts, Athens, wasn't getting the attention it needed from Sparta. So they decided to build up the Long Walls again, which had been taken down by Persia during the Persian invasions. But Sparta saw this as a negative thing. What if Persia came back? Then they would have a stronghold. So they were advising Athens not to do this. And at the time, Sparta was kind of leaning on the fact that it was still superior in rank and in power. That Athens they had a good friendship, so Athens would, heed to that. Well, Athens, up and coming, wanted to see themselves as equal to Sparta, didn't want any part of that. So they came up with a plan to ensure the completion of their walls with Themistocles, who was a hero at the Battle of Salamis, said earlier was an important naval victory, and he was general of the fleet. Themistocles went to Sparta to stall them. Long story short, the walls were able to be built up large enough that they could be defended, and once they were, Themistocles promptly told them, "All right, Sparta, we don't need you anymore. We don't need to consult you in matters of security. So we're just going to take it from here. Peace out, And Sparta was like, okay, and Thucydides say that Sparta didn't, outwardly show that they were displeased, but states that inwardly they were hurt, So It got to them. And that's why I feel that was important, because this was really the first point, the first time that Athens had truly come up, challenged Sparta for, in a decision of this magnitude. And they straight up told them no. So, and I feel like it didn't result in the war because at the time they had a stronger friendship after the Peloponnesian Wars, or the Persian invasions. Okay, so this is a picture of the walls. The walls are outlined in red, so it connects Athens all the way to its ports. Okay, so you get a good glimpse of that. Okay, so the Megarian decrees. To sum it up, the Megarian decrees were passed as a result of Megara's, questionable offenses they made against Athens. There are several reasons, or several offenses that they did that are reported. One being, they worked on sacred land, they killed a herald, they stole up some prostitutes from one of Pericles' main women. Whatever the case is, they passed this decree, wanting to punish Megara, but Megara being an ally of Sparta, not wanting to draw Sparta into an outright conflict. So this is what they settled on, a decree that prohibited them from using Athens ports and setting foot in the city pretty much. However, the decree actually did not have as much of an impact as Croix points out. He has a riveting narrative on that. It didn't do much towards Megara's economics as it was Sparta, so the Spartan ultimatum. That's what I'm going to get to. Okay, so Sparta's ultimatum. Megara pleaded to Sparta to get Athens to rescind this decree. Well, Sparta was like, okay, finally getting involved. You either pull this decree from Athens or we're going to war, kind of thing. And it was here that it wasn't so much a problem with the decree, it was a test against Athens. They wanted to see if Athens would yield to Sparta, to acknowledge them as superior in rank stuff. Well, obviously Athens didn't want any part of that again, and the war broke out shortly afterwards. All right, my conclusions. Although the general consensus of the war was unpopular with Athens and Sparta, Pericles was able to kind of persuade things to keep going along anyway. It is true that if Athens was able to rescind their Megarian decree and cooperate with Sparta, that it would have been enough to avoid outright confrontation. However, Athens had already done enough to kind of get the stones in motion. So if it wasn't the Megarian decree, it would have been something else down the line recently. It was already bubbling up, and Athens was already too full of itself, arrogant. It was at the top of the mountain. So those are the main things